Okay, let's see if this works. I am just checking here. So it seems that it works, but I don't get any video here. Okay, let me just quickly. Okay, let's see if this. Okay, it works perfectly. So, hello everyone. How are you doing? It's been a long time since I've done a live stream. The last one was in, I think, the 20th of February or something around that time, somewhere around that time. So we still have, what's the time? I think we still have, no, it's exactly 2 o'clock here in Cyprus. So as I said, today is a live stream. I announced it only a few hours ago, which is a bit unfortunate. It always happens that I don't have a fixed schedule, so I cannot plan ahead. And I was only able to do this, to schedule this this morning. So I thought I had some free time during the afternoon, and I was like, okay, this is the perfect opportunity to do a live stream. So what I want to talk to you about today is provide an overview of my packages for Emacs, and then briefly mention some of the other publications that I have on my website, publications that have been published since the last live stream. And of course, later I will join the chat to comment on any remarks or questions, if there are any. So hello everyone in the chat. So what I have here is a brief presentation that I have prepared so that I don't forget something, and then we can continue on with the chat. So let's start from the beginning, and I just want to narrow this. Of course, my name is Prodesilas, also known as Prot. This is standard by now. Greetings from Belgium, says T. So greetings from Cyprus. Belgium is one of my favorite countries. I've lived there for how much? How long? 3 years and something, and it's a very nice place. But maybe we can talk more about this later during the discussion at the end of this presentation. So let me briefly start with an introduction to my newest package for Emacs, which is called Fontaine. And this package allows you to set font-related configurations as presets and switch between them on demand. What I have here in this code block is one such preset. So it has a property list, so you specify the family of the default face, the weight, the height, the family of the fixed pitch face, and so on. You can read this at your own pace and also consult the documentation string and the official manual. Fontaine is not yet published as a package. I pushed some commits earlier today, and I actually pushed a commit a few minutes ago. There still are some final tweaks to make and make sure that everything is in order before submitting it for inclusion in GNU ELPA, so the official Emacs Lisp package archive. Let me quickly demonstrate what Fontaine does so that you can see it in action. So I have in my configuration, I have already defined several presets, and you can give whatever name you want to each of those presets to identify them. And then you just invoke one command, and it prompts with completion for one such preset. So I can select the preset I want. The regular is what I normally use to do editing. So it's like this. It's very small compared to what I have now. So let me switch back to the presentation preset. You can see it over here, presentation, and there are other presets as well. And you will see this in action when you try it. I think it's a very convenient tool to have, especially when you change a context like this. Maybe you want something specific when you are writing, and then when you are reading, you want something different, so you can have that as well. When you are doing a presentation like this one, you can have a third preset and so on. So this is the one package. I will make a formal announcement about it once it is available on GNU-Elpa. So next up, and of course you can always find more in the coding blog of my website, so protesilaus.com/code log. So that's it about Fontaine. Last week I published two packages. One is called cursory and the other is called timer. It's an acronym TMR, but it is pronounced as timer. So a brief overview of what each of those does. Cursory is the same concept, the same principle as Fontaine in the sense that you can define presets of cursor configurations and switch between them on demand. However, the implementation details are different, so they are considerably different, but the core idea is the same. So you can, as a user, define, for example, one preset that uses a box cursor, such as what I have over here. You can see this is a box cursor with a slow blinking rate. And you can also have another preset, for example, which is a bar cursor with a faster blinking rate. So let me show you right now in action. Again, there is a command that prompts with completion. So I have here three presets. Of course, you can give whatever name you want and you can have as many presets as you like. So let's switch to the underscore. I don't know if you can see this on the screen, but basically it's an underscore that blinks very fast. Let's switch to the bar. The bar, you can see it again, it's over here. It blinks a bit slower than the underscore, and the box is this one, which is the slowest in terms of the blink effect, but it also is the most visible one. So the idea with this, with cursory, is again that you may be changing contexts. For example, when I do a presentation like this one, I like to have the box cursor because it is easier for people to see it. But when I am editing, I use the bar cursor most of the time, or the underscore depending on what I'm doing. But usually it is the bar cursor like this one. But for presentations, I prefer the box. So this is the one thing. Cursory and the timer are both available on GNU-Elpa, so you just install them the way you install all packages. And a timer is a simple package for setting timers. Once a timer elapses, it will send a desktop notification and also play a sound. Like tit, 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 you get the idea. And you just set a timer using a command that prompts you for a number. This number, if it is given on its own, for example, if you give it the number 5, it interprets it as 5 minutes. But if you give it a value of, for example, 5s, then that means 5 seconds. 5h is 5 hours. Of course, you could give it 5m, which is for 5 minutes, but that would be superfluous. There are some other commands that help you cancel the timer or review the log of when a timer started, when it ended, and that sort of thing. I won't demonstrate this now because it will play the sound that it is annoying, I guess, for a live stream. But it's a very simple idea. You just get a prompt, you input a number, and after n amount of time, you will get a notification. Very simple. And of course, each timer that you set can have an optional description. For example, you can have a timer and give it the description of, let's say, 30 minutes, bake bread, 10 minutes, prepare tea, or something like that. So it's easy to identify your timers if you want to cancel one, for example. I have a plan of producing a command that will list the running timers, but that needs a bit more work. But anyway, you can try it, and if you have any ideas, you can, or feedback or whatever, you can inform me about it. So this is about the last week's packages. So I have published two packages in a few days. I published those two, and also there are others which are already on GNU Elpa. So this brings me to exactly this point about my other packages. The first point is that I have migrated all my Emacs packages and a few other Git repositories to SourceHut. You can read about SourceHut online, just search for SourceHut and you will find it. But basically it is a place where you can host your projects, and this place respects free software. It can work without JavaScript and that sort of thing. So maybe you are interested in it just as I am. I think it is a project worth our support. And of course the sources are, for example, like this one. So the Git repository will have a link like this. This is for the Modus themes. But of course, if you replace the Modus themes with Fontaine or Cursory or Pulsar or whatever, you will go to the respective Git repository, and there are mailing lists as well. And those mailing lists are where you will send an email about a bug, about some feedback that you have, or to start a general discussion, or even to send patches. I will go into the technicalities of how to use SourceHut in a future video or publication, depending on my availability. But if you have any questions, you can always contact me in private, or just send an email to those mailing lists, and I will do my best to help you. I migrated to SourceHut, but I did not abandon GitHub or GitLab. So all my packages still have a mirror on GitLab and GitHub. So you can always use those if you prefer these platforms, and you can always report your issues there. So that works perfectly fine, and it will not change. The point was for me to have a workflow that is email centric, because this means that I can use it from inside of Emacs. Whereas GitHub and GitLab require that you run a graphical web browser and do everything from inside the web UI, which is not as convenient for me. So that's the one thing. The second point is that I have put the development of my MCT package on hold. In case you don't know, MCT provides a set of enhancements for the default mini buffer completion. So it allows you to treat the mini buffer and the standard completions buffer as if they were part of the same space. That's the idea. So you get a workflow, rather an interaction model that is similar to other packages like Ivy or Vertigo, for example. The reason I have put MCT's development on hold is because on Emacs Git, what is also known as Emacs 29 or the master branch, there already are some MCT-like capabilities pertaining to the default mini buffer, and there will be more of them in the coming days or in the near future in general. So I thought this was the right moment to admit that there is no point in continuing the development of a package that will eventually be superseded or de facto deprecated by what is available in Emacs as a built-in package. Also because these changes already break a few minor things here and there, and I thought it wasn't worth my time to fix those problems and always be in the lookout for other changes in Emacs Git which require more fixes and that sort of thing. It's not nice to target, to develop against a moving target, and it also doesn't make sense to spend resources on something that will eventually be deprecated. So I suggest that, of course, you can continue using MCT if you are on Emacs 28, for example. It will work perfectly fine. But if you are on Emacs 29, if you are building directly from the Git repo of Emacs, I encourage you to either use what is available in Emacs, what is built into Emacs, such as these new capabilities, or try the Vertigo package by Daniel Mendler. Right now I am using Vertigo, and I have been using it for maybe a week or so I'm not sure. So that's point 2. Point 3 is that I gave a lengthy interview to the publication InfoQ. This is a Chinese publication, and it was about Emacs and some everyday life issues. You can find the link on my website, and it includes the entire interview in English, and there is also a link to the Chinese version as well, so you can check that if you want. I wish to thank Kimi Luo for doing this, and I thought it was a nicely done interview. The questions were well researched, and I thought they covered a lot of interesting points. So you can check that as well. And the fourth point is that my other packages that are already on GNU-ELPA, so my other packages for Emacs, have all been updated to their latest versions. So this is Pulsar, Logos, and Lin. You can read about them on my website and then in their respective documentation and so on. All of them work well. I am very happy with what they offer. I think they are stable. I don't expect to make any major changes in the near future or introduce any major features for that matter. But of course, if you have any ideas or if you want to see something done differently, then of course you can contact me about it. Again, those the official repos are now on SourceHut, so if you want to send a message to the mailing list, you can do that as well. The links again are the same as I have over here. You just replace Modus Themes with the name of the package, and of course you can also find those links on my website and on the documentation of each of those packages. So that's it about Emacs. Now an overview of my publications on philosophy. In February, when I did the last live stream, I said that I was planning to do more videos on philosophy. And this continues to be the case. I still plan to do more videos on philosophy. However, I have not produced any video since February. I wanted to record at least one or two even during March. I have them prepared, but I didn't have the time to do them. And also I have some more that I wanted to do in April. Again, same principle. I didn't have any free time for them. So the three videos that are available right now are those over here in a reverse chronological order, so you can check them out if you are interested in this sort of thing. Not to belabor the point, even though I did not produce the video as I had planned, I still was very busy in terms of writings on philosophy. There was, of course, the presentation I did for LibrePlanet 2022, which was about Emacs and the notion of living in freedom. Superficially, it was about Emacs, but it was theoretical and abstract, and of course, large portions of it could be read without any reference to Emacs. So, what is freedom, how to live in freedom, and that sort of thing. I consider that a publication on philosophy. And there are a few other publications on philosophy again, tackling practical problems, practical issues this time, with a philosophical mindset or outlook, but still with a specific case in mind. So these are published on the commentary section of my website. That is a section where I publish with permission and without disclosing the information of my correspondents, emails that I receive and I reply to, and usually my replies are thorough. My reply may be 2,000 words, for example, so I think in that case it makes sense to also publish what I wrote, because others may find it interesting as well, and I think those issues are applicable to lots of us, to all of us maybe. So again, I think this makes them relevant to a lot of people. This is again in reverse chronological order what I have published in this section since March. Just to mention some titles: On Ambitious Goals, Expectations and False Wants, Specialization, Moderation and Difficult Life Choices, Cosmic Transfiguration and the Afterlife, Relationships, Expectations and Dehumanization. Please read this with an open mind if you read it, but please do so with an open mind, because this is not an easy topic, and I wanted to publish it. I had some reservations about publishing it, but I ultimately thought that it was for the greater good to make it public. So this one, read it with an open mind, and of course don't judge it before reading it to the end. On wisdom guiding the action again, and about the world as simulation, this idea that the world could be a simulation, and what does that imply. So these are some publications since March, so you can check those out. Again, the plan is to record videos on philosophy. I hope to do it in the coming days or weeks or whatever, but I cannot make any promises, of course. Publications on politics. I always want to write more about politics, but again, I seldom have the time to do so. Still, I managed to write 2 essays this month, and these are not in reverse chronological order, so of course I have to do that now. But anyway, the one is a comment on a video that was published by Jordan Peterson, the eminent professor, and the title of that video is why 1% of the world's population controls 45% of the wealth. And I have my own comment on the matter, and in case you are curious, it is not in favor of Professor Peterson's view. So that's the one thing, and the other publication, the other essay, is a leftist perspective on the war in Ukraine, and basically this is a commentary against any form, all forms rather, of imperialism, and also a reminder that we have problems that exist, problems which are structural in nature, and we should not develop tunnel vision when it comes to this disaster that is unfolding before our eyes. So that's just two publications on philosophy. So yes, that's about it, folks. This was an overview of what I've been up to since the last live stream I did. I wish I could make more live streams, and I also wish I could announce them long in advance, because it always happens that I do these very spontaneously. I think the last live stream was announced like 20 minutes in advance. This one only a few hours. But of course, I announced it during the morning where I live. So in some parts of the world, people were were still asleep, so they never got the chance to read the announcement. So that's unfortunate, but anyway, this is how things stand. Hopefully, in the future, I will be more effective with communication, planning, scheduling, and so on. So that's about it, folks. The text of this, what I just read from here, will be available, no, rather is available on my website. And if you are in the live chat, there is a link already over here. Otherwise, in the description of the video, and of course the video will be recorded, so even if you don't join live, there is no problem whatsoever. You can just watch the video or simply read the text. So I will now turn to the chat. If there is anything to talk about, we will discuss it now. If you have any questions or remarks about whatever issue, we can comment on it right now. Otherwise, I will close this live stream earlier. So if there is nothing, there is no point in just staying here and talking without any specific theme in mind. So yes, we have hello to everyone. Hello, hello. We have some greetings from India. So thank you very much. And greetings from Serbia and from New York. So that's very nice. We already cover 3 continents, so that's very nice indeed. I've never been to any of those places. I've been to Belgium, as I said earlier. I have friends from Serbia, of course, but again, I've never been there myself. And we have all the other people saying hello to everyone. I like your logos package very much. Thanks very much for it. You are welcome. I think it is a very useful idea. I am using it right now, by the way. But let's yes, I am using it right now over here. So let's get out of the presentation mode. So you can see I have everything over here. So this idea of focusing on one page at a time and doing a presentation this way, I think it is very easy to do, and it is very effective. And I don't know if you are using logos in Emacs Lisp files or whatnot, but I also use it there, and I think it's helpful in that context as well. It lets you navigate the outline, and that's very simple and very easy to do. And of course, it complements other packages, other tools that you have, like for example the built-in I menu or the consult package by Daniel Mendler, which has an I menu equivalent, and you can always jump to a given location with completion. But Logos lets you do it, sequentially. So yes, we don't have something else to talk about. That's basically it. Not sure I missed something. No, I have everything here. So hopefully I will do the video this week away from Tallinn in Estonia. So hello to Estonia as well. I guess you are all a bit nervous in the Baltic countries with regard to what is happening in Ukraine. I hope that things don't turn for the worse. I think things are already bad, of course. Whenever we have a war, we have a calamity. There is no doubt about that. But of course, things can always get worse. Whenever we think that something is bad, we should always expect that it can get even worse. And given the arsenal that all these sides in this war have at their disposal, nuclear weapons and so on, things can easily turn from very bad to disastrous. So of course we don't want to see any of that, and I hope that we have a resolution to this conflict sooner rather than later, and with as few new casualties as possible, given of course the existing disaster. So we have, hi, can you explain the mailing list workflow for developing packages? So, okay, so you refer to this about SourceHut. So the idea is very simple. I do what I was doing before with the Git repository. There is no change there whatsoever. So commit the messages, push them, and work with Git the way Git works on all platforms. What is different compared to, say, GitHub is how you will report an issue. Let's say you have a bug with Fontaine. Maybe I could bring let's do it like this. Let me go to a new tab, and let's do it like this. We can actually come here. So you are on the mailing list. You have followed the link to a mailing list. Let's say you want to report a bug about the Modus themes that I have over here, and there is a link to produce a new post. It says here, and you can see that the link, if you are on a graphical web browser, you can hit right click and copy the email address. Otherwise, you can see it here. This is the email address. Or you can just hit the button and it will open the default email application that you have. So you produce a regular email the way you use email for everything. So you will write a subject line, for example, bug about, I don't know, the vertical package, the faces of the vertical package. Let's say you have, this is the subject. And then in the body of the email, you will just write what you would normally write if you were to report this on GitHub, for example. So this is the bug. Here is how it looks. You can attach a picture, and I can see this picture on my email. And then I will reply to you the way we reply to emails, standard stuff. And you will get that reply in your inbox. And then if you have any follow-up feedback, you continue with the email thread. And of course, if you just want to review a conversation, you just check the link. So the link to the mailing list, and you just see what is already being discussed. For example, AV color changes. You just follow the link, and you browse the archive the way you would do on any website. And this archive can also be downloaded, but this is, I guess, a more advanced workflow, so I won't touch this point right now. And anyway, I plan to do a video, or at least write a tutorial on everything pertaining to SourceHut. If, however, you think that for whatever reason SourceHut is difficult for you, no problem, no stress. You can still use the mirrors on GitLab and GitHub. So it's always, for example, github.com/Protesilaos, and then / let's say modus themes. So you can find all my packages there. So if the mailing list doesn't work for you, don't worry. I still maintain the mirrors, and everything should work there as well. So there is that. Let's see. If you have any further questions, you can let me know. I hope I clarified the point. But if you are curious on how I do it on my end, in terms of the email, it's the regular email, so there is no difference in that regard. I just have a couple of commands in case I receive a patch, or in case I want to get the URL of the email I am reading. But other than that, for users, it should be just a regular email. AK says, I have a question. What was your motivation for creating the MCT at the time? Given that there were many well-matured completion packages, why not contribute to them? So that's a good point, of course. The reason is that I was using them now I want to make sure that I get the date right. I think at around early 2021, so let's say January 2021, but I am not sure right now. I was using the Embark package, and back then Embark used to have a live updating buffer for showing its candidates, and in that case it could be used for completions. So instead of using a completion framework, before that I was using Ivy. Instead of using Ivy and iComplete, but instead of using those, I was using the generic mini buffer and Embark to display the completions. Then I made some changes, rather I wrote some extras so that I could navigate between the mini buffer and Embark's completions, so cycle between them without actually changing windows. So for example, you press the up arrow and you go to the completion, you press the down arrow, you go back to the mini buffer, that sort of thing. So I wrote those extensions, and then I realized that they were not specific to Embark. They could be used with the standard completions buffer. So then I started writing my own prot mini buffer file. That's how it was called back then. And the problem at the time was that my code was not clean in terms of implementation. The code was fine, but it was mixing my own configuration with what should have been a package. So there were two problems. One was that I could not disable it on demand, and I sometimes have to disable it to test another package, because the development of my modus themes requires that I test all the packages that I support, and there are hundreds of them. So one problem was that I could not disable it, and the second problem is that other people could not use what I had. So one day I decided to spin out prot mini buffer into its own standalone package, which I called the MCT mini buffer and completions in tandem is the acronym. Basically that was done, when was it? September, October, November, around that date, I'm not sure right now. I published MCT as a standalone package. It worked perfectly fine. It offered something different than the other packages, so something different from Ivy, Helm, Vertigo, iComplete, because it was one using just the generic mini buffer and the generic completions buffer, so it was not adding another widget or another way of using the mini buffer. That was the one thing. And the second thing is that in terms of its interaction model, so strictly the user-facing aspect of it, it was a bit different than the others, because, for example, when you now I am using Vertigo. When you do Control-X-B with Vertigo to switch buffers, it eagerly pops up the mini buffer by default. Vertigo has configurations to change this, and you can also do it on demand. It's very flexible and very powerful, but let's focus just on the defaults. And also bear in mind that when I wrote MCT, Vertigo only had this interaction model. So you get this mini buffer popping up eagerly. Whereas with MCT, you wouldn't get that. You would have to type in some characters before the completions would pop up. And then the completion would be live updated. So this allowed you, if you were to set the right values for the delay of the pop-up, you could, for example, do Control-XB and then quickly follow it up with, for example, prot Emacs. And then you would do that and hit enter. And if you were to do it fast enough, the completions would never show up. So it wouldn't have this pop-up effect as it has now. So that was the main difference in terms of its model of interaction. I still think that is a good model. I still like that idea. And if Vertigo were to provide something like that, I would be happy. But I am happy with how Vertigo is right now. So again, there is no problem. I am not saying that Vertigo is bad because it does not work like MCT. But I'm just saying that if it had that option, I would like to have it. But it's not a major issue anyway. Other than that, my motivation to develop MCT was to practice Emacs Lisp, and I think it helped me immensely, as is of course clear by the amount of packages I have been writing lately, because I was able to work in practice with some of the more advanced eLisp forms, for example, if let, when let, and that sort of thing. So I wrote a lot of those forms, and I learned how to use them very effectively. So MCT helped me understand eLisp better, and from then on I am able to write packages more effectively and as you can see more regularly. So just since March we have Logos, Pulsar, Lin was developed earlier, but I rewrote it, so we have Lin as well. Timer was developed earlier, but I rewrote it again a few days ago. Cursory and now Fontaine. So of course you see we have all those packages that have benefited from my endeavors and my experiments with MCT. So hopefully that explains my rationale and my motivation. A comment now on a general comment on this idea of why did you write a package instead of not contributing to an existing package, which can be reformulated as saying why did you reinvent the wheel. I think in terms of educational purposes at least, it is a good idea to try to reinvent the wheel. It's not a bad idea, because you must understand that before developing MCT, I didn't have the skills to contribute to a package like Vertigo, for example, because Vertigo has a very high standard when it comes to its implementation, its code base. So at the time, I wasn't at that level. For many things, I still am not at that level. So of course, even if I wanted to, I couldn't contribute to existing packages. Whereas reinventing the wheel, so to speak, developing MCT gives someone the opportunity to learn. And once you learn, then of course, if you want, you can contribute to existing packages directly. Of course, when you develop a package, you already contribute indirectly, because MCT was a proof of concept, if anything, a proof of concept that you can get a reasonably good completion, a reasonably good user interface with just the generic mini buffer and the standard completions buffer. You just needed a few more commands and a few more conveniences. And now Emacs 29 is providing a subset of MCT's features or ideas, and I wouldn't be surprised if the maintainers, the people who are contributing to this, discover what I discovered by developing MCT and eventually implement the features that MCT has or similar features, and of course improve upon them. I'm not saying that they have to do what MCT did. Hopefully they will do better. So yes, that's always the idea. Whenever you make something happen, it can have rather a ripple effect. So hopefully I explained everything. Thanks for the question. Bernard says, what do you think about minimalism in software? I hear the word used a lot, but most popular software on Linux doesn't seem minimalist to me. Vim would have fewer features if it was truly minimalist. And this point about, this is a very good question, by the way, and this point about Vim summarizes the state of this discussion. I have talked about minimalism in my live stream. Let's go to my website and maybe we can go to the code log. I did live, maybe like this, live, I forget how it was called, but I think it was the live stream I did, the live stream I did on the 22nd of September 2021, which was about Emacs and the Unix philosophy. So there is, of course, you can watch the video, but there is also the text of the presentation here. And there I also talked about this notion of Unix and by extension minimalism. To summarize what I think that minimalism is misunderstood because we are thinking about minimalism in terms of lines of code or in terms of I don't know how neat the implementation is. For example, you have software provided by the Sackless community, and such as, for example, DWM or the Sackless terminal, the ST terminal. And the Sackless community prides itself on the fact that they suck less because they are committed to an X number of lines of code, and that is supposed to mean that they are minimalist. I think that minimalism should be understood in terms of completeness, minimum viable completeness. So if a package sets out to accomplish one specific task, and if it accomplishes that task in a way that is complete, feature complete at the minimum, then I consider that minimalist. I think that bloat, this bloat that we hear about in the Linux community, is introduced when you start adding more features which are not strictly necessary, but which are, for whatever reason, good to have. Because then you are developing a second package on top of the first one, effectively. So that deviates from minimalism. The other way of looking at minimalism is in terms of workflows. Because if we take minimalism to mean very few features, or for example, one feature or 5 features or 1,000 lines of code or something like that, then we will say that Emacs is not minimalist because it is bloated, it has all those features. But if you think about it in terms of workflows, in terms of what you can do with the program, then the discussion is different. And this is something I actually also talk about in my interview with InfoQ China. I think maybe I also use the word minimal. No, I don't. Anyway, there is something somewhere in this interview, but I can't find it right now. Where is it? Why did it change page? Sorry about this. Why did it change page as I was searching? No. Okay, anyway, but I think there is something about this, about workflow, maybe something workflow. Okay, yes. There is a related concept here, which is about thinking about minimalism in terms of the workflow. So instead of looking at it from the perspective of whether it accomplishes a minute task, a given task, or whether it has, let's say, a fixed number of lines of code, you think about the program in terms of what it can do for you. And if you think about it in terms of workflow, then things change. For example, with Emacs, I have my editing in one place. I do my presentations inside of Emacs. I handle my emails inside of Emacs. I handle my agenda inside of Emacs. I manage my music collection inside of Emacs. And probably all those other things that I do with my computer. Most of the stuff I do on my computer, I do it using Emacs, and I do it in a minimalist way. Why? Because I don't have to re-implement the features that I have. For example, this idea of changing the cursors or of changing the fonts, the packages that I demonstrated earlier. I only had to write it once. I didn't have to write the equivalent for 10 different applications. I didn't have to write a package to change the cursor in Thunderbird, another to change the cursor in LibreOffice Writer, another in the terminal, another in, you get the idea. You only do it once. So in terms of workflow, if you think about it in terms of workflow and combine it with minimum viable completeness, then I think you get a different perspective on minimalism. So I have a more nuanced view on the matter than what is usually referred to by the term minimalism. With regard to Vim, the people who talk about minimalism and the people who blame, for example, Emacs for being bloated, say that you should use Vim because Vim is supposed to be minimalist. What they don't say is that Vim is actually not minimalist, because Vim has many of the features that Emacs has. Vim can do multiplexing. It has a term command to spawn a terminal emulator. It has those Windows splits. When I say multiplexing, I mean that it can create those windows. I'm not sure if Vim calls them windows. I always forget the terminology. What Emacs calls panes, anyway. Vim can have that, and Vim can also have workspaces, so they call them tabs in Vim, so it has that as well. So Vim has those extra features as well. So why are you using Vim and Emacs, for example, if Vim already has those features? And why would Vim have those features if it is supposed to be minimalist? And why are you loud and vociferous about minimalism when you are using Vim? So that's the thing. I have nothing against Vim, by the way. I think it is an excellent piece of software. What I don't understand is why we have this fixation with a simulacrum or a misunderstanding of what minimalism is. I don't understand why we need to always preach about minimalism but not follow the essential ideas, the principles of minimalism. So that's the idea. I hope I have answered it adequately. But if you have any more questions, you can ask me and I will try to clarify. Thanks for the detailed response. You are welcome. Are you still using BSPWM, asks Oliver. And the answer is yes. Let's go just for a second to my dot files. And this is the log. Okay, I have to push a commit to the mirror, but I will do that later. But you will see already that I made some changes over the last few days to my configuration for Sway Window Manager, and also for Herbstluft WM. And I also made one to BSPWM, but where is it? Here it is, of course, at the top. The previous commit that I did was about BSPWM. And the answer is yes, I use BSPWM every day. It is my default window manager. The reason that I don't really make any changes to the configuration, the last one notwithstanding, I just changed the automatic tiling scheme, so this diff over here. But other than that, the reason that I don't make changes to BSPWM is because it is very stable. It just works. So I am very happy with what I have there. I made some changes to Sway because I was in contact with a user of my dot files, and I thought I would make some tweaks there because it wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be. It is a bit better now, but I still think Sway and Wayland in general still don't have a feature parity with Xorg. So once they do, maybe I will switch to Sway. Maybe, I don't know. I still like BSPWM, also the model of its interaction. But maybe I will switch to Sway. Right now, however, I am using Herbstluft WM. And I have in my dot files, I have, you will see, of course, I have BSPWM over here, and I also have Herbstluft WM over here, and then I have this thing over here, which is the Xorg tiling window manager configurations. So these are common to BSPWM and Herbstluft WM. So I have Polybar, and I also have the simple X hotkey daemon, however you call it, which has a common file over here, and then individual files for each window manager. The reason I am, by the way, my dot files are managed with GNU Stow. This is noted in the README. The reason I am using Herbstluft WM when I am recording a video is because it has a feature which I think BSPWM does not have and Sway doesn't have either, which lets you divide the physical monitor, so what you are seeing, divided into virtual monitors. Because I have now an ultra wide display, it is 2050 pixels by 1080, so it's not a fancy monitor, it's nothing special, but it is more than the 1080, the standard 1920 by 1080p that I was using. I exchanged it with a friend of mine. It was supposed to be temporary, but here I am still using his monitor. And with Herbstluft, I can divide the screen in two monitors, so to speak, two virtual displays. So on my left, the way I'm looking at the monitor right now, there is a space which is about 650 pixels or whatever, where I see OBS, so the program that I am using to do this recording. So I can see it now, I can see myself over there, I can see the video, and I also can see the level of the audio and that sort of thing. So I know that it is still playing. And here on my right, so the area that you are able to see, I have Emacs, and then this window over here with the live chat. I don't know if BSPWM can do this. But the reason you want to divide the physical monitor, the physical screen, into virtual monitors is because if I switch a workspace now, I am switching on this so-called monitor only. So you see, I just go to a new desktop, so it has just the background over here, so nothing to see here. And if I go to another desktop, I can see what I have over there, the recording on the video hosting platform. And here is workspace number 1. So my OBS is on workspace number 0, and number 0 is on virtual monitor 0, whereas all the other workspaces that I just showed are on virtual monitor 1. So this is Herbstluft WM. It is a manual tiling window manager, whereas BSPWM has an automatic scheme by default. Of course, you can also do manual tiling in BSPWM. Herzluft and BSPWM are very similar in terms of how they are configured. Both are configured with a shell script, and they are also very similar in terms of how they work. So I really like them, and I think it makes sense to have Herzluft WM for this specific monitor that I have, which is wider than the usual monitor. But otherwise, yes, I use BSPWM all the time, full time. So yes, next point, Celtic Orthodox Prayer says, you and Charlie should do a stream together. I would watch. I would like to do it, of course, no problem. There was also the idea of doing a live stream with David Wilson, also known as System Crafters, and with Andrew Tropin. But you know, things get in the way and it never works. With David and Andrew, it would be easier for me because we are on the same time zone. I think Andrew is also on the same time zone with me. David, of course, is in the same time zone, but it never happens. It is always something difficult. And of course, as you can see also, I don't stream regularly, and I never manage to have a fixed schedule for my streams. They are always spontaneous, so there is always that to account for. So it's difficult to coordinate with others. Charlie is in the United States, so we also have to factor in the difference in the time between the time zones. So it would be difficult. In practice, it would be very difficult, but in principle, I would be happy to do a live stream with Charlie or with anyone else for that matter. For as long as we have something in common, something to talk about, then I am more than happy to do a video, no problem. Next question. What is the reason for you using BSPWM compared, let's say, to DWM? The reason is that when I switched to BSPWM in 2017, I think, end of 2017, I wanted to learn shell scripting. Of course, I don't have a background in programming. The only language I can program in right now is Emacs Lisp, and still I have a lot to learn here. And I can also do some shell scripting, but nothing super fancy. I am okay with shell scripting, but not an expert. So the reason I wanted to use BSPWM is because it is configured with a shell script. So I was like, okay, I want to learn shell scripting. BSPWM is configured with a shell script, so of course this is what I will use. DWM uses a C header file. I can configure the header file. It is fairly straightforward, but otherwise I don't know any C. I cannot write, for example, a hello world package. So I have zero knowledge of C. So in that sense, it doesn't make sense for me to use DWM because it wouldn't help me learn anything. Whereas BSPWM did help me learn a lot. I learned how to use sed effectively, for example, and how to do all those other fancy things. And I am very happy to have switched to BSPWM because of that. Also, it is an excellent program, an excellent tiling window manager in terms of its features, in terms of how it works, but DWM is also perfectly fine. But yes, if you have this motivation to learn something by tinkering with it, then for me that was BSPWM. For you, maybe if you want to learn C, DWM would be a good choice because you also have the opportunity to hack on the source code and perhaps write your own patches for the program. If I knew how to write C, then of course I would give DWM a try. I would use it in earnest, but I would use it with the intent of also tinkering with the source code and learning how to write C. So until that happens, I am sticking to BSPWM. The other thing about what I personally I don't really like about DWM, the DWM model. for those who, like me, don't know what they are actually reading when they are reading a patch in C. Because I have seen a few people like this who use DWM, who install lots of patches from the Sackless website, but don't have any knowledge of C, and by extension don't understand the implications of what they are doing. So for this case, personally, I don't like it. I don't like to use a program and patch a program without understanding what those patches mean. I prefer the maintainers do that task. If something is in the code base and it has been added by the maintainer or approved by the maintainer, then I can trust the code. But if something is just provided as a community level patch, then I don't know, will those patches work together? Will they work with the new version of DWM? And those kinds of considerations. So I don't want to bother with that. I don't think it is an interesting way to spend my free time, and also because I don't know any kind of C, there is no point in bothering. So just that. So I hope I have answered your question. So I think that's it. I didn't miss anything. I think that's it, folks. By the way, Celtic Orthodox prayer, you asked me once if I am on the IRC channel of Emacs. I do log into IRC from time to time, but my problem with IRC is that when I log in, there is already a discussion going on, and usually it's something random, and I don't know how to follow the discussion, because once you log into IRC, you only see what is posted after you enter. There isn't a history of what was discussed before. So I always have this difficulty where I feel like I am out of place. Like people are having a party, they are discussing something very funny, they are laughing, and I am just there and I have no idea what is going on. But yes, I do join from time to time. If I ever see something that I can comment on, I will comment on. Otherwise, I just leave it open for a while and then I switch it off. So I am not really a heavy user of IRC, but if you are ever on the channel and you see me joining, then of course you can send me a message, no problem, no stress. Thank you for the detailed reply. You are welcome. And are you Greek or Cypriot? I am a Greek Cypriot, as it is called, who was born and raised in Greece. In Cyprus, we have two major communities. We have the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots. We also have other communities. We have Armenians. We have Maronites and Latinos. So these are the five communities of Cyprus. But Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots are, or at least used to have, certain rights which were enshrined in the constitution and pertained to how the state was organized and how things would work. However, there is this problem which is known as the Cyprus problem or the Cyprus dispute, and it is an ongoing problem that has persisted, depending on how you want to look at it, for about 50 years, maybe more, maybe a bit less, but depending on how you want to look at it. So it has persisted for half a century, and there is no resolution in sight. So there is that. But I was born and raised in Greece. I lived in Greece since I was born, since the day I was born, all the way up to I turned 18 years old. So I finished high school in Greece, and I have been around the world. I traveled to a few places, around Europe rather. I traveled to a few places, to Belgium, France, Western Germany, and now I am located in Cyprus, in the mountains of Cyprus, the so-called Troodos Mountains. There is a village here where I am. It's a small village, few residents, and it's a remote place. It is a quiet place. So there is that. But if you are asking in terms of my mother tongue or something, then that would be Greek. It's Greek, of course, for people in Greece, and it's also Greek for the Greek Cypriots. Axel asks, it is probably expected that you use a IRC bouncer that is always collecting past messages. I don't know what is that, so I will have to look it up. But if you have a convenient link already, maybe you can send it to me and I can check it out. The point, yes, if I can review the discussion, that would be helpful, because then I understand what is going on, and then I can make some meaningful comment. Otherwise, I am just sitting there and trying to figure out what the topic is. Let me log into IRC right now to just give you an idea of what I mean very quickly. So it will log in, and we want to go to Emacs, to the Emacs channel. So you see I just logged in, so now I can just see the people who are here. So someone quit just now, but there isn't any discussion here, so it's a bad moment, a bad timing. But anyway, people will start talking, and I have no idea what they are saying. So there is that. Oh, so you are Greek Cypriot as well. That's very nice. If you ever come to the Troodos Mountains and want to talk about Emacs and stuff, we can arrange a meeting, no worries. That's always nice. I would like to have, like, in other countries they have these Emacs meetups, and it would be nice if we could have one in Cyprus as well. Of course, I understand it is not easy, and it's not easy for me to leave the mountains and go to one of the cities in Lemessos or Lefkosia. But yeah, if we could make something happen, that would be nice. But of course, it's not easy to do it, so I understand the constraints. That's always a problem. I mean, of course, if we can do it virtually as well, I'm fine with that. That goes without saying. It always works. So there is no discussion going on the IRC right now, so I will just leave it. I forget how I close. I just switch off. I just close Emacs and it switches off automatically. If you want the content on IRC, one way is to join the IRC channel through Matrix. Okay, so there is this bridge, as it is called. I have heard about it, but I really don't know how to do it. So again, this is something I have to research and see how to do it. I guess you just, so the context, okay, I understand. So I guess you just have to join matrix.org and then irc.liberachat whatever and the channel, right? Something like that. But yes, I will look it up, because if you have a log of what is discussed, it is easier to participate, and it's also more useful if you want to learn something or whatever. If we organized such meetings, it would probably be only you and me. I don't think there's many Emacs users here. That's probably true. I think there was another person in the chat a while ago who said that they lived in Lefkosia, Nicosia. But so yeah, we are three at most. But yes, that's always the problem. We are. This is a small country, and of course Emacs is a niche program, so everything is working against us. And I also don't know people who are into free software in general. So even if we were to extend it to be Emacs and free software, we still have trouble finding people. So there is always that. But yeah, we can always try. I mean, whatever. Maybe I can search how to do matrix IRC bridge. I cannot write anything right. Bridge. Oh, so let's see if we can find anything. So we have this from the matrix.org. This app works best with JavaScript enabled, so that's not a good thing. Okay, so I have to use JavaScript, so I'm not fond of that. An application server gateway for okay, so this is a package or something like that. Supports dynamically bridging IRC channels. That's not what I want, probably. Maybe there is something else. Bridges, usage, IRC bridge. So yes, I will find it eventually, but no worries. Connecting, joining. Okay, so it's but this is if you join through the Matrix website, right? So how would I do it from inside of Emacs? Maybe you have to provide the URL of matrix.org and then this part, right? Okay, but no worries, I will figure it out eventually. So what we have, how did you get into Emacs and non-CS, as a non-CS? So no, without a computer science background. For this, you can find the answer in the what I did about the interview with InfoQ China, because they ask this as well. So you can check this if you want, but the idea is that I switched to GNU/Linux in the summer of 2016. So my background is in the humanities. So I switched to Linux because of political reasons, basically. I wanted to have more control over the software I was using, more freedom, and that sort of thing, not to bother you with things you already know. So as soon as I switched to Linux, I started learning more about the computer. So I started using a terminal emulator. I started doing things inside of the terminal. I switched to Arch Linux because I wanted to do everything inside the terminal as a way to learn. I think that's a very didactic way of learning. So it did help, of course. So I then switched to a tiling window manager. I started running my own shell scripts and so on, to a point where I was okay, let's say, with this environment. I understood what was going on. I could write shell scripts. I could do what I wanted inside of the terminal, and everything was working fine, and I was learning new things practically every day. At some point, however, I realized that my custom setup, which I had up to before switching to Emacs, up to the summer of 2019, was not very effective at scale because I was using Vim as my text editor. I had the terminal emulator, I had Tmax, I had Mat for my email client, I had MPD as the music player daemon, and NCMP C++ for the music client, and Newsboat for the RSS reader, and probably a few other tools. And the problem with those tools, as I also say in my presentation on Liberate Planet 2020, is that they don't communicate with each other. Each of them has its own standalone presence. Vim is configured with a Vim script. Tmax has something like a shell syntax, but it is not a shell syntax. BSPWM uses a shell syntax. Mat uses something different, Newsboat another configuration, and so on and so forth. So you have all those different languages, and if you want to implement something, you have to repeat yourself over and over and over and over again. For example, if you want to have a consistent theme, you have to implement one theme for Mat, one for Newsboat, one for this, one for that. Or you have to define your own X resources and then source that file and hope that your program can read from X resources, or it can source from the X resources file, and so on. For example, Polybar, I think, didn't have that capability a few years ago when I was using it and I wanted something consistent. So you had to hard code the colors, so that was not nice. Whereas with Emacs, I am able to integrate everything in a single platform, and I can have efficiency at scale. And this also links to what I said earlier about minimalism, because what I am doing now, it's actually much easier than what I was doing before. It is much easier to maintain a single Emacs configuration for everything than to have all those standalone packages, Mat, Newsboat, Tmax, etc., and have always to manage them one by one. So because of all this process of tinkering, of trying to learn, of being curious and all that, I eventually started programming. At some point, the tinkerer becomes a programmer. So now I know a bit of eLisp, and you can see with all those packages that I write, I think the code that I write is getting better. I think it is of a good standard, and I think it is getting better over time. So I am happy with that. So I can program in Emacs Lisp and also a bit of Bash or POSIX shell if you want. So that's how I got into this milieu without being a computer science graduate or having any formal knowledge of the sort. So hopefully that answers your question. This is what bothers me with Linux ecosystem as an engineer. I hope I live long enough to see a modern Lisp machine operating system. That would be nice. If we had a Lisp machine, it would be nice. But in the meantime, we have to do with Emacs as a user level, a user land, whatever it's the appropriate term, a userland Lisp machine. So that's it. But if we had something that was Lisp all the way down, that would be even better, of course. But what can we do? The Unix paradigm of designing the operating system is the most prevalent one for our purposes, so we have to use this. Not that it is bad, it is perfectly fine, of course. But I think when it comes to integration, when it comes to workflows, when it comes to being efficient at scale, then you need something more than the Unix approach of standalone packages that do one minute task but don't actually talk to each other in terms of their implementation, their configuration, not implementation, in terms of their configuration. So we have one message in the Emacs IRC channel. So you see, for example, this person is saying see also, and they are linking to this package over here. So of course I don't know what was the question. So that is my problem, but I will search what the people in the chat mentioned, and I will try to see what I can do. If there is nothing else, folks, I will close this live stream. I think we have covered a lot of ground, but there is one more question, so we will see that. Have you tried the GNU Geeks distribution? Yes, I have, but not in recent times. I have been following Geeks, I think, for 4 or 5 years now, maybe a bit more. I have been following their blog and their announcements and everything. I tried to use it 2 times. I think one was in 2018 and the other one was in 2019. And in both cases, the package management was very, very slow for my underpowered hardware. So I thought it wasn't realistic for me to use Geeks at the time. However, in more recent times, they have made improvements on that front. And I think now it is much faster. So at some point I would like to try it again. But for me personally, I still don't see the value proposition of Geeks. Because of course you have this declarative operating system. You have Lisp, of course, that's a good thing to have. You have everything in a single configuration, which is in Lisp. That's very good. Of course, I like that. Of course, as an Emacs user, what do you expect? But I mean, in terms of the reproducibility, this point that Geeks has. For me, that wouldn't be much of a point. I mean, I have been using the current install that I have is on Arch Linux. I have been using it since for almost a year now. I installed it and it is very stable. It works perfectly fine. If I ever need to reproduce my setup, I have my dot files. And it is very easy for me to export the packages that I have in a text file. You can do that with Pacman. It's very easy. You output them to a file, and then of course you can install them on a new machine. So if I were to reproduce my current setup, it would take me however long it takes to install Arch Linux and all the packages. So I don't know, depending on the internet connection, maybe a couple of hours, maybe something like that. I'm not sure. But it wouldn't be much of a problem. So in that sense, I don't know what Geeks has to offer for my use case. Of course, if you have a distribution, so to speak, that others are using, and if you are working in a team setup, or in a lab where they have a specific set of configurations, then of course, yes, Geeks makes perfect sense. Of course, the declarative package management is invaluable. Of course, being able to roll back to a previous version is great to have. So Geeks, I understand, is a great piece of software, but my use case, I don't know if it merits that kind of engineering. I don't think I will get anything out of it. But of course I may be wrong, so please correct me if I am wrong. And anyway, I would like to try Geeks at some point to see how it works right now. Gregory, hello Gregory. I haven't tried it, but SourceHut provide a hosted IRC bouncer. Okay, that's good to know. So I will be researching bouncers and bridges and all that stuff. So this is something I will also bear in mind. I know that SourceHut have a web client of IRC, but I didn't bother to check what it actually does or what it is about. But now that I have this information available, I will check again. What we have here, I am switching to Geeks when I get my new hardware, but currently I am using Arch. So yes, that's perfectly fine. I guess your new hardware will be more powerful, maybe something like that, so it's easier to work with Geeks. Or maybe you just think it is a good timing to try a new distro once you have the new computer available. But as I said, for me, for my use case, a private computer for a single user, I don't think there is that much of an added value of using Geeks relative to using Arch Linux. And of course, there is the point that if you are using Geeks for the Linux Libre kernel, so of course I see many people running Geeks with the standard Linux kernel, the non-free, the one which includes non-free blobs. So of course, if you are introducing more non-free stuff and everything, then you also have to go out of your way to use other package archives. So not the official Geeks archives, as far as I can tell. So there is that to consider as well, right? So yes, it's just a matter of timing, right? Okay, I see. To explain, an IRC bouncer is a service that logs into IRC as you and stores a history of messages among some other things. Okay, I thought about that. I figured as much. Again, I will give it a try. I think it will be very useful to have it. So that way I can log in, let's say, in the morning, and then during the afternoon I can review the chat, and if there is something there I can send my own message. I would like to participate more. It's not that I don't want to participate, but it's always this thing I mentioned with being in the right place at the right time. And if you are not in the right place at the right time, then of course it is difficult. But with the bouncer and with the bridges, I think things will be easier, and probably you will see me on IRC more often. Of course, if you are on IRC, I am Protesilaos, so that's my username. So if you are there, you can message me. So thank you, Bill. Thank you for being here, and take care. And I think, folks, we have nothing else to discuss. I think we have covered a lot of ground. I told you what I wanted to say about the overview of my packages and the other publications that I have shared through my website. And I think we have discussed quite a few issues now. So I think I will close this in a couple of minutes. I will give you 2 more minutes because there is always a delay. So in case you have not reached this point yet. And then we are closing the chat. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your inspiring viewpoints and your time. It is appreciated very much. Have a good time. Bye. Have a good time as well, and thank you for being here and for your comments, questions, or remarks. And of course, now I have to go check and learn more about IRC, and I will see you there, I guess. Mohammed says thanks, Prot, and thanks to you as well. So that's all for today, folks. It was a very nice live stream. I didn't have the opportunity to announce it long in advance. Maybe next time I will be able to schedule it ahead of time and inform you accordingly. So until that time, take care, and I am